welcome to the Popcorn Junkies. This is Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
The last one.
The last one where they're all together, all in it. But I was saying to Maddie as we came out, I was saying, you know, probably in about another 10 years they're going to go, let's put the band back together. Because they're already talking about putting Iron Man back on the screen in his own film.
Oh, yes.
So Guardians of the Galaxy 3, this has been, James Gunn posted recently about the fact that he always wanted to recreate a Star Wars for this generation. And I've always said that I think that this is your generation's Star Wars. It's a space opera, it's camp, it has characters that are sort of not morally dubious, but their loyalties are to themselves first, and then we've seen across the three films to the group.
Yeah,
they're sort of increased across the films, which is very like Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're sort of similar ilk. But then also
They're very like Groot and Rocket, to be honest.
Absolutely, yeah, just like Groot and Rocket. And then the other aspect of it all is that for a variety of reasons, there's been enforced time between each film.
Yeah.
So, which in your generation's case, it's very rare for you to have to wait
for something. Yeah.
Because stuff just comes at you so quickly. What were you feeling going into this? Were you
I
nervous?
mean, I feel like I'm always a bit nervous, especially since the last few Marvel films haven't been brilliant. So I do worry about getting my hopes up and like things not meeting my expectations. But I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy is like one of those things where I know I won't be completely disappointed, at least. So I went in really excited, sad that, you know, it's going to be the last one of them all together.
Absolutely.
Worried about what was going to happen in it because, you know, these trailers have definitely been kind of building up to a really sad...
Teeing something awful up.
Yeah, exactly. So...
Yeah, I was going excited. Just before we went in to see it, I was talking about the fact that I think Marvel is in a total crisis. I think they've produced too much stuff. They've become obsessed with Phase 5 and how everything fits into each other. And even James Gunn himself, who's now at DC Films, said, you know, there's only so much we can take of big things, smashing big things, and spectacle rather than kind of character. This is very much Rocket Raccoon's film.
Yes,
this is kind of like his origin story.
Yeah.
And really, you know, it starts...
And you can tell that because it starts with him and...
Yeah.
You know, the whole first sequence is Rocket Raccoon.
Exactly, the whole first sequence is Rocket Raccoon, exactly. And it starts with him sort of playing music and is he feeling down? He's sort of
well, they're singing Creep, yeah.
Yeah, oh God, it starts with Radiohead.
Yeah, which is always
a good sign.
I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo.
And of course, music is so endemic and important to these films, it's crucial. So really, yeah, the film started with Rocket Raccoon and Sean Gunn, who's the main guy with the funny thing on his head, trying to make his arrow fly.
And Star-Lord drunk.
Star-Lord, yeah, he's an alcoholic. He's slobbing about, he's doing a Thor. He's going to become a fat Thor. So yeah, we're sort of in this sort of, is it Nowhere? Is that the name of the place? Yeah. So they're kind of in this sort of enclave. And then suddenly, is it Adam Warlock who smashes him in?
Yeah.
It's Adam Warlock who fatally injures Rocket Raccoon, right?
Yeah.
Played by Will Poulter, who was
really good in it.
So is he a villain? He starts as a villain and then isn't a villain?
I don't really know comic lore, but I remember... Patrick being really excited about Adam being in the film, like everyone was being really excited about it, but I think they've definitely made him stupid. Like I think in the comics he was a serious, like dangerous villain. And
he's incredibly violent but dim, which I thought was quite a nice combination. And so really the premise of this film is really that Rocket Raccoon is taken, well, he's fatally wounded, and really the whole film pivots around them having 48 hours to sort of rescue him because he has in his biotechnology an off switch.
Kill switch,
a kill switch, which they can't access.
Yes.
So they have to access it.
By finding his creator.
The creator. Now, this for me is what made this quite a rich film, was the you know, you're always wondering, where's the villainy going to come from?
Yeah.
Where's the kind of evil? Who's the villain? What's it going to be? Is it going to be someone wanting to just smash up the world or destroy the world? And no.
Well,
but he wanted to destroy the world in what way?
By making it perfect.
So you had a little bit of, what's it called, where you want to sort of create human. It's a little bit like Nazi Germany. It's that idea.
He wanted to be a god. Really.
He wanted to be a god. Yeah.
Thought he was a god.
A bit Alien Covenant type thing. Yeah. It's that, and I do like that as a sort of motivator of drama.
Yeah.
That someone is driven by this deluded narcissistic idea that they can achieve perfection.
Yeah.
And he's achieving perfection around basically maltreating animals.
Yeah.
This is all about animal, what was it, vivisection and...
Like animal cruelty,
cruelty.
And testing, I guess, all of that kind of...
I thought it was quite powerful about all of that. So...
It's too much for me, I love my animals.
As I say, it does the origin story of Rocket Raccoon. And
Which was horrific.
So explain that. So we go back to him in flashback a lot in this film, don't we?
Yeah. I'd say like majority of the film is
flashback.
Around his flashbacks.
And we keep going back and we keep finding out that he is being tampered with by the High Evolutionary, who's the villain, played by Chukwudi Iwuji.
He was amazing.
He's the villain.
really good villain.
Oh my God,
I thought he was really
actor.
good. Yeah.
I mean, he gave...
Because he kind of, I think you mentioned this when we came out, he kind of gave a theatrical performance to it, but it was so, I loved it. It really worked with the intensity of his character and
I mean, he was Shakespearean,
yeah,
absolutely. And he had... I mean, he was so... I mean, I know it's always a kind of pretentious phrase, but this guy is inhabiting the role. I have to say, I think what Marvel gets right very well are these kind of deceptively calm at first, but then increasingly uncontrollable villains. If you think of Thanos...
I mean, Thanos is,
Kang the Conqueror. I mean, I know we've got the Jonathan Majors fiasco now. And this chap, who I mean, I can't underestimate...
Has he been in other stuff?
He has been. I recognise him from other stuff, but Chukwudi Iwuji, he's Royal Shakespeare Company. That's where I've seen him.
Ah, there we go then.
He's the RSC.
That will be why it's Shakespearean performance.
Oh my God, and he went to Caterham School, which is down the road.
Oh my God.
He's a local, he's a South East London boy.
Yeah, we had a lot of our Brits in there, Will Poulter as well.
Lots of Brits, lots of Brits in there. So it's a sensational villain. But anyway, there's a lot of Rocket Raccoon as a baby in a cage.
Yeah.
And I've never been more emotionally moved by a CGI animal in a film.
No, me neither. If you think about it, all of those animals were CGI'd and all of those bits were very heavily CGI'd, and yet I totally believed it was a real raccoon being.
It was quite something. I mean,
but that's something that I feel Guardians of the Galaxy has always been able to do, right from the first film. You cared so deeply about... Obviously, you cared about all the characters, but Groot and Rocket Raccoon, who are the two CGI'd ones, are most of the time people's favourites, and it's just you're not even there. It's just crazy. And it's still mad to me that it's Bradley Cooper because it doesn't sound like him whatsoever.
But the weird thing is James Gunn has precedent with that, doesn't he? Because he also did it with King Shark. He's very good at making inanimate things. There was a dog in this. I think he was less successful with the dog in this.
Yeah, the dog was in the Christmas special as well.
That's right. I don't know about anyone else. I'm not 100% convinced by the dog.
Right.
I didn't really get what his power was or what...
Telekinesis.
I don't know, wasn't vibing its personality, if I'm brutally honest.
Yeah.
So we've got these backstories where essentially Rocket Raccoon, he's trapped. He's part of a batch, which is something AI 89 or something. He's particularly smart though, isn't he? There was some really wonderful... I thought there was a wonderfully tender scene where the High Evolutionary has Rocket Raccoon almost on his lap.
Yeah.
Like a father with a toddler, and Rocket Raccoon sees a rocket fire off into space.
The sky for the first time.
And he's very bright, isn't he? Rocket Raccoon is sharp.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of know this, because we knew that he was, smart to a certain extent from the first one because of how he makes things, but not to this extent. Yeah, he was smarter than a god.
Yeah. He's top of the class when it comes to these kind of evolutionary constructed animals.
And that's kind of why the High Evolutionary is sent so mad, because he's how have I created something that is smarter than me? Yeah,
exactly. And yet the High Evolutionary also has this sense of he kind of admires it too.
He wants his brain to create something again.
Exactly.
That's better.
And so we get this little clutch of friends. He makes these friends whilst
Lila, the otter, Teefs, the walrus, and Floor the rabbit.
Floor the rabbit, which has a sort of cage around it and floppy legs.
Spider legs.
The walrus, who's in a...
Did you notice how his eyelids were
pinned open?
Pinned open, yeah.
And the otter, who has sort of no arms, and Otter was kind of a love interest for Rocket.
Yeah,
really,
definitely.
And these were really sweet. This was sort of AI, sci-fi, space opera Beatrix Potter.
Yeah.
I was getting all sorts of vibes. There's lots of baby animals in this film to make you go coo, ooh, ah, all over. Very, very sweet. And so essentially we have the Guardians set off on a mission to essentially clutch from one of the High Evolutionary's henchmen's head the tech that's needed to save Rocket Raccoon. I mean, that's a huge containing of the plot there. That's essentially what it's all about. And we have, as ever, lots of very funny set pieces. I think
I love Mantis and Drax's relationship.
Let's talk about that.
And they were brilliant from just the first time they met in the second film.
Yes.
Where he's just always saying she was ugly. Just I just love their relationship
him
so much.
I mean,
he's so good. He's just perfect.
Yeah, and he's almost kind of doing that thing where there's wonderful scenes like where they're all angry and they're trying to pretend to be something. He's like, "Are we pretending to be angry?"
Yeah, and then he's like,
and then he had, he had the metaphor quote in one of his other films, and now he's dealing with analogies. And he says at one point the great line,
"Oh, even my butt can make analogies," because he made a poo in the shape of a fish, apparently.
And this is what I mean. This is what you come to a James Gunn film for, is this kind of lunacy. But I have to say, Dave Bautista has absolute comic bones.
Yeah, he's just Drax is Dave and Dave is Drax.
Absolutely.
And I loved, I was saying to Dad, I loved Nebula's kind of blossoming of her character in this film, because I feel like in the last two films, obviously she was she was more of a threat in the last two because she wasn't like part of their group or anything. But I feel like she's always kind of been people's character that they didn't really like.
She's a filler.
Kind of yeah. But it was really nice just kind of seeing the softer side to her and how close she's gotten to the others, and then her kind of banter and relationship with all of them. I just love seeing all those
I
bits.
thought she was quite maternal.
Yeah, she was.
Because she was looking out for him. I quite like the way they didn't go into any sort of scripted detail on that, but she was looking quite sort of lovingly on
and how much she cared about Rocket being
Yes.
saved and everything.
And then, of course, we've got Gamora back, and so you've got I kind of wanted them to give us a bit more of that. I mean, we got some of it, but the idea that she's forgotten their relationship. Do you think she has forgotten their relationship, or is she just saying it? But Star-Lord is wanting to reignite, that sort of original connection they had. He's almost hoping that they can repeat it. Like he says things like, "You're going to be able to see how cool I am for the first time. I don't mind this."
Yeah.
But there's this idea that she can't remember their relationship. And well, I mean, has to be a spoiler review because you can't tiptoe around this without giving away some big things. But I like the fact that it remained unrequited.
Right, yeah.
There were some obvious kind of narrative choices here that they could have made, and they didn't make them, which I thought was excellent.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are so many set pieces in this. Like, for example, what did you think of all the kind of bubbly tech, the kind of biotech of that ship that they went into?
Oh, the kind of skin one with fleshy one.
Yeah, and then they're suddenly like when they're sort of in this kind of white place, which is like. It was like bubble wrapped Star Wars.
Yeah, I quite liked it.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And they're all putting their hands to get through doors. They put their hands in sort of gibbly
jelly
stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff. And we had some those weird suits of the sort of
their suits were so sad. That guy was so funny. The
lieutenant,
the
sort of chief lieutenant who and those moments. What I like about James Gunn. So there's this moment where he's saying, "Yeah, I've got a nephew who's kind of shit." That he extends the joke that step further than anyone else would, and I think that's what makes it funny.
Yeah, and he managed to. I don't know. I feel like the Guardians of the Galaxy films have they're like literally their own genre of humour. Like nobody else does it like these.
True.
Nothing else does it like these.
And I
films.
found with every single one of the Guardians films, each time I've watched it a second time, it's been immeasurably better because I go into every Guardians of the Galaxy film slightly nervous, and so I'm almost I'm
because the first one was so good that
so
they
good.
always
Exactly, and you're thinking, God, I want these three films to really hold together for the rest of eternity.
And that's why, although it makes me sad that this is the last proper one that they're saying so far, it kind of makes me glad that they haven't dragged it out like something like Star Wars and all of that, because
Always end on a high.
it's better to keep less is more sometimes.
Always leave a party early.
Quality, not quantity.
Always leave people wanting more.
Yeah.
Always know when you've hit the top. All those analogies.
But yeah, also the soundtrack delivered again in this, because that was a major thing for the last two films, how good all of the tracks are in it. And really
even the ability to get nostalgic about the original film soundtrack.
Yeah.
That was great. Now, this film takes us to the edge of trauma and tragedy.
It was really dark, this film, I'm going to say.
Yeah,
there
you
was
did say
less humour than... Because the other two were a lot more... They were a lot more funny, and kind of all the other stuff was just added in, whereas I'd say this was like a dark film with humour here and there.
It is really dark.
It was really dark. It was really messed up.
And it is really dark about who you are, what you are, about the kind of... I mean, I felt it was very much about our time, this idea that, there is a thing called bio-AI, and I think this will become a thing. And I think Rocket Raccoon, this is like an existential film about Rocket Raccoon pondering what the point of him is, what he is, why he's in the world, and how he's in the world. And again, without giving it away, Rocket Raccoon does deliver in this film, but you're taken to the very edge of tragedy. And I cried twice
so
in
stressful.
this.
I cried the whole way through, pretty much. Like all his backstories. I was sobbing each time it did backflash.
Every time it did a backflash.
But I would say the one thing that I kind of found the least believable, or the moment that I found myself kind of the most bored, I would say, was when they were in the world that the High Evolutionary had created, with all the animal people. They just looked too like they had prosthetics on.
I'm so pleased you said that.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
And I know they couldn't do all of that CGI. That would have been a lot. But I don't know. I usually prefer keeping it realistic and like makeup and animatronics, but in this case I think they needed to be CGI'd, because they just looked too much like they'd had a snout stuck on their face.
Yeah, so this is the moment where they land on that sort of counter-Earth planet,
and all the people are animal people.
Because the High Evolutionary, I like this idea though, High Evolutionary was so smitten with, and interesting that he's an RSC actor, he said the literature, the art, the creativity on Earth, he said is second to none in the universe. I love that, because I felt
nowhere else is like art.
Yeah, we are the dogs. But he wanted to create a counter-Earth, and in that counter-Earth you've got all these people, but you're right, as soon as we started to see their snouts and their faces.
And I guess in a way it works, because it wasn't good enough still.
Yeah.
But
It wasn't good enough for us.
it wasn't good enough for us either. No, it just was a bit too much of them, and I was just a bit like, you just all look too made up.
I agree.
Considering how good the rest of the film had done all of that kind of stuff, they just looked a bit naff compared to the rest of it.
It's like going to a Comic-Con.
Yeah, but even then, it was nothing like terrible, but it was just one of those
I
where
know
I
what
was
you
like,
mean. It was a bit saggy there.
Look a bit.
It was a bit saggy there, and I also think.
And it's the thing of when you have that kind of prosthetic makeup on somebody, and then they've just got human eyes.
Yeah, I know. Exactly,
like their eyes just look the same.
I tell you what, I was hoping. I thought when they were kind of coming into land in that world, I thought, oh, this is going to intersect with WandaVision. I thought for a moment they were going to, because it looked like the suburbia of WandaVision.
Right.
I thought, oh, they're going to land in WandaVision. But
that would have been.
I tell you what I really liked about this film. I like the fact that it didn't interconnect with any of the other films. I mean, I know characters have come in.
I liked that.
I mean, and you said there was a moment which I was a bit unclear about, and you said, don't you remember that's what happened I didn't remember the Adam Warlock bit at the end of the first film.
Yeah, he was in the end credits. Yeah.
Right.
Because the people that they were in shit with in the second film, on top of obviously Star-Lord's dad, was those gold people.
Yes.
I forget the name of their race.
But
we found out that they're created by the High Evolutionary as well.
Exactly. So in a weird way, although the High Evolutionary is a nasty fucker and deluded,
horrible.
I mean horrible. Really horrible.
Really horrible.
With a sort of face that's stretched.
I thought a really interesting bit was when like, you know, Star-Lord, Nebula, all of that lot were basically watching like a hologram of what happened to Raccoon when he was torn apart and put back together again. The whole way through the last two films, Nebula is always talking about the torture that Thanos put her through, and it was awful. But even she, when they were looking at the hologram of Raccoon, said, "This is nothing like what Thanos, like this is way worse than what Thanos ever did to me." And I found that really like that shows you that this guy is actually even more like fucking evil than Thanos.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was clever because it was just written in script.
It was like a really quick line. She was just like, but that line's so important because her whole character has been about the torture and like she's been through, and it was nothing compared to Raccoon's. I think that's just her.
Yeah. I mean, and there is there was a couple of heartbreaking moments in this film, and there is a heartbreaking moment where I literally was holding Maddie's arm, going no, and then there was another moment, and I was going no, and I just couldn't bear it. There were moments where I was literally thinking, I can't actually bear this. This is going to be. This is like Han Solo dying. This is.
I couldn't really watch or listen at points. So I was literally like, no.
Really traumatizing. A particular shout out to Will Poulter. He pitched it perfectly.
Yeah, he was really good.
Pitched it absolutely perfectly. Adam Warlock. His relationship with his mum, hysterical.
Yeah, it was really good. And his relationship with the little pet that he took on.
I liked the pet more than I liked the dog.
That pet was so cute. I was really worried about him the whole time.
Yeah, and he looked
worried
like
about all the animals.
Yeah, loads of animals. I thought he got a bit soppy, where it involved lots of children and lots of animals being freed.
Yes, agreed.
I just felt it got a bit.
I'd rather just the animals freed than the children.
I was waiting for a really dark joke about how annoying kids were. Do you know what I mean? I was waiting for it, especially when there was that moment where they're going jump, jump.
Jump, yeah.
Jump. And then suddenly Drax demonstrates he can speak, he's multilingual. I mean, that was so fun. Drax is a star. The name of the actress who plays Mantis, Pom Klementieff.
I love her. She's so brilliant. I love the moments when she kind of loses her shit and she's suddenly like, she's just so amazing.
What did you think of Zoe Saldana coming back? She was quite sort of austere. I mean, that was her character. She was sort of...
Yeah, Gamora's always been like that. I think Zoe always plays her character as well. It's just more that the character Gamora's more...
She's a bit of a miserable old cow, though, isn't she?
Yeah.
No, you sort of want to shake her.
I've always found her the hardest to kind of like in all the films.
Yeah, you sort of wonder why... Maybe that's why Star-Lord's drawn to... I loved the bit where Star-Lord was trying to chat up the woman in that kind of bodily kind of ship, and it didn't work. And she was gorgeous, though. I loved her. She was
her face was pretty...
Her face was amazing. So Zoe Saldana, and of course, Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. I thought he was excellent.
He's always so good.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes I worry that perhaps with all the success that's spiraled from the first Guardians, has he slightly lost his sense of humour? Has he slightly become a bit too serious? I don't think he's great in Jurassic World and all those films. But I thought it was fantastic. Now, hang on a minute. Groot, Vin Diesel gets to broaden his script.
And he says, I love you guys. I was sobbing. I was a wreck in this film.
Can I say something about Groot?
I can't watch it again for a while, I don't think, because it really messed me up. I
didn't like the design of Groot in this one.
Oh, you don't like Chunky Groot?
Don't like Chunky Groot.
Oh, I found him cute.
I like Ivy Groot. What? Rooty Groot. You know, where there's lots of kind of lines going.
Oh,
I thought it was a bit chunky. And also when he develops wings, I thought, nah.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Oh, I liked all of that. I thought it was awesome when they kind of infiltrated the ship the High Evolutionary and he just like whipped out all the guns underneath his
that
wood.
was nice. Oh, special shout out, because I hate CGI fights. I hate all that. There was one particular fight, how they shot
so
it.
good. When they went back in to save the kids.
And they were in that sort of tunnel room.
Yeah, it was really well done.
I tell you what, that has to. They need to. All the studios need to make a note of that scene, because for me, and I think John Wick does this too. I keep hearing wonderful things about
John Wick's fight scenes are really good.
Yeah, apparently, yeah, exactly. Is that what they do, which is so good? I don't remember in the early days of Marvel, we'd often come out of films going, it was great, but it was so fast you couldn't really take it in. It was,
and also a lot of the fight scenes in superhero films are just boring. It's just kind of but also like. They don't do anything interesting with the camera work. No. It's all quite like punch, punch, punch. But this was like they were going
beautiful. Yes, sort of really flowing camera.
But Guardians of the Galaxy have always been the only ones that with the fight scenes I've still really enjoyed. Yeah. But that was really cool. Yeah, that fight scene was really good. It was one of the best Marvel fight scenes I've ever seen. And you got a sense of being in it, but you weren't sort of held at arm's length because too much was going on, slow-mo. Really innovative ways of killing people. I love death. It's just really I honestly wouldn't have been surprised if this film had ended up being an 18. I think it's one of the goriest of the like superhero films I've seen in terms of like actual emotional trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed they use they have an allowance, don't they, of being able to say fuck once and shit once and still keep it for kids.
Right.
And I noticed they use that quite. There was that moment where they're getting in the car.
And
Star-Lord delivers the F word. Okay, well, again, I mean, a lot of reviews, as Maddie said before we did this, a lot of reviews have been quite average about it. I'm trying to work out what the Rotten Tomato aggregate is.
I've seen a lot of really bad, a lot of people saying that it did the classic Guardians of the Galaxy thing of forced humour. I was like, forced humour? I've never felt the humour's forced.
There's a lot of people in the comic book hero land that don't like just silly slapstick funny. I mean,
a lot of people are getting angry because they think Marvel's just being turned into a joke because obviously the comics are a lot more serious, but I'm just like, fucking loosen up.
Yeah, but things like Doctor Strange and Ant-Man, I mean, I was expecting them to be funnier. I thought they became overly obsessed with process, and I totally disagree. I think you come to the Guardians of the Galaxy for humour, and I think that Taika Waititi's iteration of Thor, you come to them for the slapstick and the humour and the surrealism and all of that. And I think obviously,
but I mean, even with Thor, I understand it a bit more because Thor started off being a more serious, on a serious note. Yeah,
boring.
But like Guardians of the Galaxy has always been like the first film was so hilarious. Like I don't really understand people, but a lot of people said that it kind of felt very messy, didn't really know where it was ending up.
I think it was a bit saggy in the middle.
I think the middle, I think the like kind of end sequence was all a bit saggy.
There was a moment, it was the bit where they were releasing all, the Watts.
Yeah,
there was about
didn't care about 10
the kids.
To 15 I know it sounds
minutes.
Awful, but I didn't care about
I didn't. I found the kids really annoying. I just thought, come on, come on, James Gunn. You'd have had a joke here back in the day. They'd have all gone, oh no, let's not. But of course you can't. It's Disney. It's the Mouse House and all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you what my top tip for Marvel would be before we sum up would be, I think Marvel need to not necessarily undo all that they've got planned for the next 86,000 years for Phase 5 to 36. I think Marvel need to take a leaf out of DC's book where they've stepped with the Batman, with Joker 2. They need to start creating almost a label within the label or a studio within the studio of genuinely dark, adult-orientated Marvel stuff, because I think it will keep Marvel fans happier. Yeah. Because there is darkness in there to be had, and I think...
Or just the more emotional side of things, which obviously this one did a lot of,
And finally, okay, well, we'll do it, so let's sum up and give it a score. Go on, Matt, do you want to go?
So obviously I went in very excited.
She did.
I was definitely expecting some sadness, because that's what the trailers have been teasing up for. I was expecting, a death. But I didn't expect it to be that sad and that dark. I know I keep saying it was dark, but it really was. I was really surprised by like how far they took it.
It went into the intense psychology of Rocket. It really does.
Yeah, it did. But just the animal, like, I'm an animal lover and I can't watch animals be treated. Like, it was really messing me up. So I was sobbing pretty much all the way through this film. I didn't feel it for one second that the humour was forced. It was classic Guardians of the Galaxy humour. It made us laugh. I just love how all of the characters somehow managed to develop more and more with each film, even though you don't think it's possible. The only thing I can ever say about the Guardians of the Galaxy is I just wish there was more of them and their kind of quarrels and their bantering and all of that kind of stuff. There were definitely saggy moments in it. I think the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, honestly, in my opinion, didn't have any sagginess at all. I thought it was like perfect. The second one had a little bit, and I feel like this one's had the most, but nothing that made me mad at it, or nothing that made me... I didn't feel bored. I just at moments felt like you didn't have to do that, or you could have done it like this type thing. Soundtrack, all the tracks were amazing yet again, and like Dad said, I love the nostalgia of the first film and the first song in the first film. Honestly, I just loved every second of it, even when it was depressing me. So I think I would have to score this film And the villain was amazing.
Astonishing.
And the villain's been good in all three again.
Yeah.
Again, always been rich in its villainy. So
Who's the villain in number 2?
Star-Lord's dad.
Oh God, of course.
What's his name?
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna have to score it a 99.
Boom, boom, 99.
And the
There
only
you go.
reason it's not 100 is because of the animal people in the cast.
Here's a killer question for you. If you had to rate the 3 in order of preference, what would it be?
First one's always going to be my favourite. I'm probably going to have to do first favourite, second favourite, and then the third one.
1,
being
2, 3.
Yeah, but even then, they're all really close. Yeah. Like, first is 100, and I'd say the last 2 have been 99.
Yeah. Okay, I kind of agree with almost everything you say there, really. I did feel, actually, at one point, or a couple of points, where this did get saggy, that the very thing James Gunn was critical of superheroes for actually happened, which was, spaceshipy stuff. Whenever I see spaceshipy whatever going on, and it only has to be on screen for 5 or 6 minutes, I think I would have much rather had 4 or 5 more minutes, like you said, of interaction between these wonderfully developed characters. I mean, to have so many well-developed, drawn-out characters in a group, and in quite a large group, it's a little bit like the Avengers, is really quite an achievement and quite a skill.
Yeah.
So that you and to have such variety in amongst them, and yet they're all sort of brought together.
And to love them all.
And to love them all. And I got a real sense, again, at the point that, something else sort of tragically happens in terms of the group towards the end. And I thought, oh no, we've got to keep this band together. You can't let this band fall apart and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I felt a real sense of affection and connection. For me, I felt almost emotional, because for me, this has been a franchise that has sat with you since the age of almost 10, 11, up until now. And so for me, it was weird, because you're now blossoming into this woman, and I thought, this is the end of my parenting.
Stop! I don't want to be
No, this is the end of my Marvel parenting. So I loved it. I was pleasantly surprised by Star-Lord. I loved Nebula, Karen Gillan, Mantis. They all delivered what I wanted. But I genuinely mean it when I say I've never thought I would argue that you need to have somehow, whether it's Bradley Cooper or the CGI operators of Rocket, need to be nominated for something, because there's so much going on in his eyes.
Honestly.
So much going on. Lots of lovely set pieces.
And the otter's eyes.
And the otter's eyes, yeah. Lots of lovely set pieces, brilliantly original fights. I just think shave 10 to 15 minutes off. I think Counter-Earth was bad.
Yeah.
And my biggest guilty pleasure in this was the villain. He was so good. I can't tell you how stressed.
And the fact he had his skin stapled on because Rocket had ruined his face.
Yeah, fabulous stuff. So what would I give it? I would give this, because I slightly more felt the bagginess than you, I'd give this 98.
Oh.
Pretty close.
Okay, still
98.
a high score.
Still a high score. I'd fully recommend it.